On today's installment of Locked On Texans, one era comes to an end while we usher in a new one.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Man, we are here. I'm Johnson Sports Guy Hickman on the other side of the screen in Detroit, holding it down for the South. Cody Davis, thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. If this is your first time, we thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. But more importantly, to all of our everydayers, our players from the Himalayas coming back to listen to Cody and myself talk Texans in era, ushering in a new era of the Locked On Texans podcast. Today we'll be talking about, do the Texans need more from Danielle Hunter, one of their major offseason acquisitions, and changes to the coaching staff, potential changes to the coaching staff to get the best out of the players for the Houston Texans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, guys, now that that's out the way, oh man, Mamba out. If you've been following the show over the last couple of months, I'm pretty sure you know what Mamba out means, but we'll get to that. And before we dive into Texans talk, Cody will be leaving the show. Yep. We've had to go for a good reason, right? Yeah. A blessing to be where he is in Detroit, covering the Detroit Pistons. Also get an opportunity to cover the Detroit Lions. I know you guys are here to talk Texans. We missed Tuesday, so we'll get into the Texans, but we gotta introduce the new co-host of the Locked On Texans podcast. Cody's smiling, I'm smiling, and I'm sure you guys in the YouTube comments are smiling as well. Without further ado, man, going through one of the best processes to get one of the best new co-hosts for the show. He got a cowboy hat on. He's smiling. Ladies and gentlemen, we introduce to you Big Sarge.
First, I want to give honor to God, to the people in the back. Thank you all for supporting me. I really appreciate that. And, this is a proud moment. I mean, it's a sad day seeing Cody go, especially everything he's done. But, without you, Cody, I wouldn't have been able to get this. And so, man, I really appreciate it.
I'm extremely excited about the direction for all three of us, right? Yeah. I can't wait to talk about the Mamba out, but the direction for all of us in this industry, an industry that sees so many ups and downs, open doors, closed doors, doors that don't get open. And so to be able to be in the middle of one brother leaving and one brother stepping in, I think we're going to take the show to new heights. But we got to start off talking about the.
Before we start, I got to do this, man. It's only right. It's only right. Everybody who's been rocking with this show know me and John always, had our screens next to each other, and the guest was always at the bottom. So it's official. John, Sarge, it's y'all show. I'm a guest in y'all house now. Well, I'm not gonna be a guest. I'm gonna always be that family member who left home but always gonna, stop by.
You got a key.
I still got a key. Exactly.
You got a key. We just gonna change the security code
and the Wi-Fi. We don't need you giving all the Wi-Fi information.
Look, you better, because the first time y'all make me mad, something gonna happen to the channel. That's all I gotta say. No, I'm just playing. But on this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans, man, we're gonna save all that mushy stuff for later on in the show. But we gotta talk about Houston Texans, man. And look. The Houston Texans, there's been a lot going on about what to do with, the penalties that's been taking place with this organization, especially with the offensive line. And John, we kind of alluded to it after Sunday's game. It marked the third straight game where they had 10 or more penalties. Majority of them came on that offensive line. And you made a very good point, a very good suggestion on whether or not it should be time for Coach DeMeco Ryans to make some changes to his coaching staff. And of course, we're looking at the coach of that offensive line.
Yeah, Chris Strouser, offensive line coach. If really, and I want Sarge to talk about it too, but really for me, it boils down to the offensive line not being consistent in areas that for this type of team, for the expectations of this team, that they should be consistent in. Whether that be the penalties, which that is probably through 4 weeks, the headline of this team. Yes, Houston is 3-1. Yes, they got to the point where DeMeco Ryans wanted this team to be going into October, out of September. Yes, they've been able to kind of hit some of those check marks, but they are the most penalized team in the NFL. And with those penalties, I think that right now, if they're not number one, they're number two. They are the most penalized offensive line in the NFL. Spearheaded and headlined by your $25 million left tackle, Laramie Tunsil, right? And so you look at the penalties. You look at the communication issues. Now, I went back to watch the first half of the Jacksonville Jaguars game, and I saw some improvement, right? Blake Fisher getting thrown into the fire. So a lot of the improvements that Juice Scruggs and Kenyon Green were able to make, you kind of look at Blake Fisher, and he may have ruined it. But with a deeper look and a second and third look, I said, well, no, they got a little bit better. But the communication with inside stunts, who's picking up the blitz, that's been a problem for this offensive line dating back to last year. And it seems like, okay, off season, we're making strides. During the season, those strides that we believe that we have believed to be made are not necessarily either concrete or it's inconsistent. Through 4 games, we've seen a lot of inconsistency. So I don't think that a change will be made during the season. If it does, I'll be shocked, depending on how this offensive line continues to play, penalties, communication issues, post-snap problems and things of that nature. I would be shocked if they make a change. But what I will say is, at the very least, going into next season, Sarge and Cody, I think that they need to look at maybe upgrading that coaching position for this offensive line.
And I don't want to make it seem like I'm making an excuse for the Texans offensive line. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for offensive line coach Chris Strouser, but I think there's a key component that we're not taking a look at. Remember now, this is the first time Kenyon Green has ever played in this system. He was out for a whole year. This is his first time. Juice is barely getting used to playing in this system as a center. Remember, when he came back as a left guard. Titus was out last year. He was hurt a lot. So you have 3 offensive linemen who are still trying to get used to this Bobby Slowick type offense and this zone blocking and the different types of things that they want to do. And I know that we have a 4-game sample size, and that's what we're using right now. But, I mean, if there's no continuity, right? There's no continuity. There's no communication. One of the biggest issues that they're having is getting used to Juice being at center and Juice being able to call out, because, the center is the quarterback of the line. So Juice has to come and he has to recognize everything that's going on from the get-go. And remember now, once again, Juice didn't play center at all last year. He played left guard when he came back off of injury reserve. And so all this is new to him. He's still learning to play. He's still learning to play that position in the NFL. He's learning to play with Kenyon Green for the first time. He's learning to play with Shaq Mason for the first time. So I think that as time goes on, if we're looking at, if we're still talking about this same situation come week 8, week 9, now there's an issue. But with just 4 games in, I think that once they can get the communication down, and we expect so much from them because, hey, we expect a lot from the Houston Texans. We expect a lot from their offense because of the skill positions. But that offensive line still has to learn to work together. Remember, they didn't have any continuity built in training camp either.
Yeah, that's another point. And this is a league-wide issue for me, and it's been boiling my blood for a while now. How many teams are just not taking preseason seriously?
Yeah.
Whether that be, multiple vet days or like if Patrick Mahomes is playing in preseason games, I don't see a reason why nobody else shouldn't be playing. Unless you're like an Aaron Rodgers, where, for the New York Jets, their livelihood as a franchise depends on whether or not Aaron Rodgers can hold up, just like any other franchise with a franchise quarterback. But if Patrick Mahomes is playing preseason football, I don't see an excuse for nobody else. I really don't. That's just me, unless you're like really coming off of an injury. Yeah.
But I was gonna say that a little bit different though, John, because a quarterback ain't in the trenches. So he can play in those preseason games because he ain't finna take them hits. He ain't finna put all that wear and tear on his body that like offensive lineman or defensive lineman is putting on their body throughout the year.
Well, no, I agree with that, right? That's a fact. But what I'm saying is if the NFL's marquee player, if he's healthy, and health is a factor, but if he can get out there and play in preseason, I don't see a reason why nobody else should. That's just me. That's my thinking. I do think it may be a little premature, especially after I went back to watch the first half of the Sunday's matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, on those 2 scoring drives for the Houston Texans, and they almost led to 3 TDs, we know that CJ overthrew Nico, who's 6'4", so we all know he wants that back. You saw the continuity and chemistry of the offensive line pick up as those drives continue to build and build and build. Even with rookie Blake Fisher, who when he first got in the game, he was getting baptized a lot. Right? I'm John, and listen, he was getting baptized a lot, wade in the water type of baptized. But as the game continued to progress in that first half, he got a little bit better. And you saw the communication between center, left guard, left tackle with him in there continue to get better. I think the changes for this Texans team at that offensive line, though, because I can look at their identity and I think to myself, guys, and stop me if I'm wrong, when I look at other great running teams in the NFL, great offensive lines in the NFL, they just play with a different grit. They play with a different brand of physicality than I think the Houston Texans offensive line play with.
So you look at it like this.
Me looking.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was going to say this. You look at it like this too, though, John. You know, we talked about a line who is still learning to build continuity with themselves, being able to communicate amongst themselves. And now you start off playing with your first game. You're playing with your starting running back and your backup running back. Agreed. Then next thing you know, you down to your third string running back and the fourth string running back and the fifth string running back. And when you're trying to they've learned the running style of Joe Mixon. They learned the running style of Dameon Pierce. Now you want to learn the running style of Cam Akers, J.J. Taylor, Dare Ugobawale, which, you know, of course they know Dare, but what I'm saying is that it makes it different because now you're going from, I mean, I don't see them running a lot of toss sweeps with Joe Mixon. They're not running those type of toss sweeps like they ran multiple times with Cam Akers. But that maybe the only way you can get Cam Akers to be productive is to get him in space. Maybe he can't run between the tackles as effectively as he used to.
Because he hasn't shown to be able to do so at this point. I agree with that.
So that's all I'm saying is that, you know, on the flip side of that, when you're starting running back and your backup running back is not in the game, now, and don't get me wrong, they still have some issues when it comes to run blocking, but you're still trying to learn. And once you learn their patterns and their habits, the next thing you know, here comes Joe Mixon back, here comes Dameon Pierce back, so they got to revert.
Yeah, I do believe that a lot of the issues at the offensive line that we're highlighting with the offensive line is the lack of starting running backs that they've been able to block for the last 8 quarters of football. Penalties are an issue. Penalties are an issue, and I think, you know, we want to highlight something. If we really, where's my flashlight? If we really want to flash a light on something.
Hey, that's flashback to me. Hold on.
I'm sorry. I am a boy.
I almost got my license and insurance for you.
It really is on those penalties, which we've heard. He started the post press conference off. Penalties. We can't keep putting ourselves in down, you know, behind the lines on first down, 1st and 20, 1st and 15. That's inexcusable. Now, when we come back, we got to talk about, do the Texans need more from Danielle Hunter? And, of course, Mamba out. And before we talk about Danielle Hunter, who got a lot of money this offseason, I want to tell you guys about how you can also get a lot of money in your bank account with PrizePicks. PrizePicks is where you can bet the more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. Sit back and watch the winnings roll in. This week, What you thinking about? Justin Jefferson more than 83.5 receiving yards, or you're looking at Tyreek Hill more than 97.5 receiving yards. Saquon Barkley, maybe you're looking at the more or less than on 76.5 rushing yards. Doesn't matter. You pick the more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You can sit back and watch the winnings roll in. This is available. PrizePicks available for California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, right? So join PrizePicks today. Download the app. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. A very, encouraged for you guys to just check it out. And it makes game day even more exciting. So download PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Cody's still here, but he ain't sitting there.
Hey, I'm just sitting here. Look, I've talked enough on this podcast since March of 2019. So, John, you do too, but as of right now, it's my moment. I deserve an opportunity just to sit back and relax and be, just mediator on this episode of Locked On Texans. But I am.
Let's say David Locke Ross, just let us have this one. We'll get back to it tomorrow. Just let us have this one.
But I do want to say I will be a little bit more engaged in this next topic because this is something that's kind of been on my mind, honestly, since the offseason. That's, what's going on with Danielle Hunter. Now, look, Danielle Hunter was one of, if not the biggest splash, the second biggest splash that the Houston Texans were able to break in this offseason. And we know with the addition of Danielle Hunter, they did let go Jonathan Grenard. It was almost like a swap. And here we are 4 weeks into the 2024 campaign. Look, I go back to what head coach DeMeco Ryans said last week. And Sarge, you was in attendance, so you could attest to this, and it brought me back to last year, how he was talking about that he was, happy and proud that the Houston Texans were able to create pressure on the opposing team's quarterback through the first 3 games at the time, but they was not coming home, meaning that they was not bringing home those sacks.
Yeah.
And we saw in Sunday's victory against the Jacksonville Jaguars, nothing truly changed. I believe they ended the game with only 1 or 2 sacks. And one of those sacks did come from Eric Murray. I must say, it's been a joy covering him and watching his growth ever since March of 2019. Eric Murray, I believed in you. John didn't. But anyways, John, listeners and viewers, Sarge, you guys have heard me say this time and time again, that I understand that when you are evaluating a defensive lineman, it's more than sacks. It's more than, getting that sack number in order to show your true value. However, over the last 2 games, and y'all could correct me if I'm wrong, especially, what took place on Sunday, because y'all was inside NRG Stadium and I was way up in Detroit watching the game on TV. But over these last 2, maybe 3 games, I haven't really seen Danielle Hunter be that aggressive force on the defensive line like they did have last year. And Jonathan Grenard, who is, as of right now, doing his thing in Minnesota, and as of right now, sitting top 10 in the league in sacks. So I just look at it from a standpoint, knowing that Coach DeMeco Ryans wants more sacks, knowing that Coach DeMeco Ryans, even though the entire defensive line has looked really good to start the season, to me, I'm like, if he wants more, to me, that's just him saying, I need to see more out of Danielle Hunter, who you are paying $40 million over these next 2 seasons.
For me, I looked at the tape and I was just like, man, the Jags are doing a very good job of neutralizing him by just running at him. The ball was, in terms of being able to just not allowing him to get a rhythm beating the tackles, forcing him to just kind of set the edge a little bit more. Did a good job of running at him. But the Jags' game plan really was getting the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hand quickly.
Oh no, I was just gonna say this is that and I guess that I guess the theme for this show is me talking about continuity. I mean, here's another guy who is new to the team, new to this scheme, and you guys remember what he said in training camp. He was like, "Hey, I got to get used to being able to just no responsibility this time." Now, because sometimes you want to revert back to your old habits if you've been playing a certain way for a long period of time, and now he's just free to rush the quarterback. Now, I will say this with him, playing in a new defensive scheme, him playing with new players. I mean, this is, he's only played 4 games with these guys, but you look at it like this: he has 24 quarterback pressures, 10 tackles, and 1.5 sacks in 4 games. That's not bad, especially when you got Will on the other side who has 21 quarterback pressures, 10 tackles, and 2.5 sacks. And so what DeMeco said, and so what Daniil said first when I talked to him about this was, he said that I've never seen someone have, I said, I've never seen a player that plays my position have so many quarterback pressures and not sacks at the end of the year. He said, so it's going to equate itself out. He says, and we're so close to getting to the quarterback. He says sometimes they just slip us. He said, but we're putting the
one
pressure.
Slipped him Sunday.
Yeah, and he got I think it was Sam Darnold slipped by him in the Vikings game, and so he's saying that we're getting the pressure. One reason why it doesn't look as effective is what Coach DeMeco Ryans said, is that interior line, he needs more from that the interior part of the line. He said because the ends are collapsing and pushing things forward, but they're not being as effective as he didn't say they were, but he said they're playing good. I need them to play great. And so I think that once you start seeing that, then it'll all come to fruition, because they kept through the first 4 weeks, they've kept the quarterbacks within the pocket a lot because they're collapsing, especially with the way that they, as wide as they line up. Now, they don't line up as wide as Aiden Hutchinson, but.
So it sounds like you're saying this defensive line is missing Denico Autry.
Yes,
okay.
They are. They are. And I would love to see, and don't get me wrong, because Fadakowski is playing very well.
Damn good football. I think Mario Edwards is playing some good football.
Tim Settle's
playing some good football. Surprisingly, Khalil Davis has been very quiet with his snaps. He was a guy that didn't need a lot of snaps last year to make an impact, but so far this year, he's been extremely quiet. I will say that.
I do want to ask y'all this question. You mentioned Denico Autry, and I am intrigued to see how much better this D-line get. But do you guys have some type of concern that when Denico Autry comes in, we could see a decline in this D-line? Only because if we go back to the first segment, John, you started hampering on players who were not really taking training camp serious. And I think that's part of the reason why we have seen, certain positions kind of have a decline in their play to start off this 2024 campaign. And Sarge, throughout this whole entire show, like you said, the running theme is going to be continuity. You bring in Denico Autry, who only had an opportunity to participate in 2 training camp practices, 3, if that, and then he was suspended and couldn't do nothing after that. And it's like, okay, if Coach DeMeco Ryans wants more from the D-line, and Sarge, to your point, more so the interior, if you just bring in somebody who hasn't really had an opportunity to go out there and practice, and he doesn't have no type of continuity with the guys that's been out there, that's going to disrupt the progression that's already been made, progression that Coach DeMeco Ryans still wants to see.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I think for Denico, because he's such a seasoned vet in this league, and to Daniil Hunter's point, I don't have to think. And so if he's not thinking, then I don't think Denico Autry, quote unquote, because they still have to think, right? But he's not going to have to do a lot of thinking, just a lot of reading and reacting, which at this point in his career, he's comfortable with doing so. You also look at Autry as a guy that, okay, we may not have you out there on first down. Maybe every other drive we'll have you out there on second down. But third down, when we need to get off the field, you're looking at a D-line that will feature Hunter, Anderson, and Denico. You fill in the blank of whoever the other D tackle will be. So I don't think it's going to set the defense back. I think it only make them better because you're going to have 3 guys that could do a good job of setting their gap, right? Gap control, gap discipline. Those 3 guys can get after the quarterbacks and in different ways. So I think that for Houston, they'll bring them along slowly, right, Cody? You've been, you talked about it a lot. Once they really get into the thick of things with the schedule, they're really going to need their guys back. And so that's when they're going to really need Denico starting Sunday with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills coming to Houston. They should be getting Christian Harris back soon. He's going to be off of IR, but he's not playing this week. They're going to allow him some time to get his body right. That's when they're going to need those playmakers. But for a guy like Denico, man, he's such a vet that I don't think he's going to need as much time because he's the third option on that D-line in the sense of like, I got two guys on the outside of me. As long as they collapse, I know what my job is. And that's to bring the quarterback down if he steps up in it and on the inside of the defense.
And I think that, lining him up next to Hunter or lining him up again, next to Will, that's a lot of pressure put on whichever side of the line that they're on. Because, I mean,
a lot of responsibility.
And Denico Autry is a large human being. And so he's a large human being. He's a violent human being. But I'm going to say this, and this may ruffle a couple of feathers, especially in the Texas fan base. I like Denico Autry, but I'm really liking the way Tim Settle is playing. I'm really liking the way that he has been playing and he's been, one of those guys that DeMeco has highlighted a lot. And so we're talking about this. Like I said, I take the season by quarters. They played the first 4 games. That's the first quarter. After this second stretch that they have to play, and I think in there they have like the Bills, the Patriots, the Packers, and I think the Colts again. I think after that next 4-game stretch, we'll have a better look at their identity, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Tim Settle's going to do, man. He one of those guys. He reminds me a lot of Malik as far as mindset is concerned. It's like, nobody's going to stop me.
When we come back, we're going to close out the show, maybe with some tears, maybe with some hugs, maybe with some good laughter, but we're closing out the show with the Mamba out. We got that on the other side of the break. More Locked On Texans. The other day, I had to come home, clean bottles, bathe the baby. Sarge, I know you know how this is, man. I had to get the house together while the wife was out. Got down to cooking, and I said, you know what, man? I ain't got it. I don't have it in me. So I got on my phone, went to the DoorDash app. DoorDash me something to eat while I was able to rock the baby to sleep and eat at the same time in peace, by the way, because by the time the food made it there, she was asleep. If she wasn't, me and her was going to be sharing fries. So I want to give you guys the same game that I got, and that's to download DoorDash. And, hey, check this out. Locked On is hooking y'all up. Use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a value of $10 when you spend $15 or more on your first order. That's LOCKEDFALL24, LOCKEDFALL24. Download DoorDash today. Again, use promo code LOCKEDFALL24. Must be 21 years or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. DoorDash, and make your life a whole lot easier with DoorDash. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, Cody Davis, my friend, my brother, full-time gig, Detroit News, on the Pistons beat. We don't really care about all that, man. This H-time against everybody. But seriously, I met Cody Davis 10 years ago, 11 years ago at Lamar University, maybe a little bit longer than that, but we shared a bond. We grew a bond in the communication department's hallways. Right before class, we was talking about 3 things: Kobe Bryant, James Harden and the Rockets, and whoever the Saints played that week. And we interned at ESPN Radio. Shout out to our mentor, Gordon Williams. From ESPN Radio, we started our own podcast and our own sports publication, YouCanArgueThat.com and The Rundown Report. Both of which we had to dissolve, right, because of this amazing opportunity that we were able to receive from David Locke and the Locked On family covering the Houston Texans for Locked On Texans. And let me tell you guys something. As a journalist, a true journalist, a true master of his craft, I'm going to give you your flowers to whoever's watching. I'm going to say the world, because there was a change in Cody Davis in 2020. COVID happened, and something else happened with this franchise around that time. Deshaun Watson happened, and I don't like a lot of change, but the issues with Deshaun happened, and we had a meeting. We said we got to find a way to still do the show. Cody said, man, we're not going to talk about that unless we have to. We're going to find ways to cover the Houston Texans that in ways that nobody else is covering them. And from that moment to Cody saying, you know what, I got a way that I want to make sure that I can highlight these rookies with the rookie diaries, covering the Rockets, covering the Houston Texans. He grew as a person, as a man, as a journalist each and every year. And it's unfortunate that he was not able to get the opportunity that he wanted to in Houston, but God had a plan for him in Detroit. So, man, what I want to tell you is I'm extremely excited for your next chapter. But not only that, I'm extremely proud of you. And I'm always going to be in debt with you for pushing me to be the best version of myself that I can be. Challenging me and also accepting the challenge of the show. So I just so many times in the first 2 years where I would have to go to his house or he was coming to my house. And after the recording sessions, we'd be like, hey, man, you sure you still want to do this?
Yep. Especially at first year.
And it was like every other Sunday, he asking me or I'm asking him, but God. And, man, I'm like I said, I'm forever in debt. And this is your moment. Detroit is yours. Detroit, they're getting a good writer. They're getting a good journalist. They're getting a great hard worker who has modeled his professional life after not only his favorite basketball player, but his favorite artist, and that's Michael Jackson, and that's Kobe Bryant. So when we say Mamba out, that's what we mean, man. The GOAT is going to Detroit to cover the Detroit Pistons. And let me say this, if you got any Detroit Piston guys in here, he was able to cover a franchise through the two franchises through the downs and in the mud, and one got to the pinnacle or a better place. So hopefully he can help y'all out there in Detroit. But man, I thank you for everything that we've been able to establish and create. And God's not done yet with you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate those words, man. It's gonna make your brother get emotional, man. That's why I only had one request for my last day on Locked On Texans. I said I got to do it with both of my guys, man. Got to do it with John. Got to do it with Sarge, man. John, Sarge. Let me start with you because during that time, 2020, when John was talking about that shift happens, that was the time I met this guy, and you know. It's funny because I came home like a month ago, and you know, me and a couple of our other colleagues that we cool with, we went out to lunch. John unfortunately was at work, so he couldn't attend. But one of our colleagues asked us, Chancellor Johnson for KPRC asked us, man, how do you and Sarge become so close? And the answer was, I don't know. I don't know. We really do not know. All I know is, man, when I started working in media, man, and, you know, John could attest to this, man, I used to be calling him like, hey, man, I don't know how to establish myself. You know, the press conferences, this, blah, 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 blah. There's this one guy who actually took time more than anybody and say, look, this is how you do it. Don't be afraid, you know, do X, Y, and Z, and just become comfortable and establish yourself, man. And me and Sarge really develop a bond, a relationship that could never be broken over the years, man. And when I look back on, you know, part of the reason why I'm in Detroit, you know, Sarge, you know, helped lay that foundation. It's funny and ironic because almost every single profile picture that you see of me, Detroit News, my credential, Sarge, I don't know if you know, but that's that same picture you took. Season opener in Atlanta.
I remember
so that. Just know that for a while is going to be my profile. Every time you see that picture, just know you took it. Now, John, I'm glad that you mentioned the halls of the communication building at Lamar University. Because my brother, me and John, we probably hit every milestone that you could think of in terms of building a relationship. We went from not knowing each other to knowing of each other, to being acquaintances, to being cool, to being friends. Now I consider that boy my brother. He called me, I answer the phone. If I call him, he answered the phone. But John, 10 years ago, man, I never forget this, bro. Remember the communication building? It had two ways to get inside. You had the front building and you had that door on the side. And I don't know if you remember, but the door on the side when you walk into it, you take a couple steps, and they used to be like this podcasting room. And John used to spend a lot of time in that podcasting room. Like, he was always there working on his podcast, You Can Argue That Sports. And at the time, John just knew me as the writer for the Lamar University Press. I knew him as the broadcaster / sports analyst for LUTV. And this one particular day, man, true story. I don't know why I was in the communication building. It was like 3:30, 4 o'clock. Classes was over or whatever. I don't know why I was in there late. And I walked through that side building, man. And I looked in that room. And me and you locked eyes. Pause. We locked eyes. And we just nodded each other like, what's up? What's up? And we walked away, bro. And I promised to God, man, at that moment, something told me that y'all two was going to build something special. And I know that was God, man. And that was literally like in 2014. And when I think back on that moment, and every time me and John hit a new milestone, whether it was interning at ESPN Houston, doing You Can Argue That Sports, man, me filling out a job application to do Locked On Texans. And I never forget when David Locke called me, was like, yeah, I want to hire you. I don't really like playing hardball or whatever when it comes to taking on new jobs. But I remember I told David Locke, I said, hey, if you want me, you got to bring John on with me because I can't do this without him. And at the time, Locked On was still pretty new. And, he wasn't the idea of having two people host one 30-minute podcast wasn't really the idea to him. And I said, look, we going to make it work. They talked. Next thing you know, he was like, we're going to hire both of y'all. And the first paycheck we had, me and John was like, man, it's not even be enough to fill up our cars, man.
It's $20, man.
But John, man, I promise, man, every milestone that me and you hit, bro, like, I always think back to that moment, man. And to be honest with you, bro, you are a big reason why I'm here in Detroit, man. Because, like, honestly, bro, like, the way you pushed me over the years, bro, man, I'm trying not to cry, but the way you pushed me over the years, bro, man, it really helped me, man. Like, y'all just don't understand, man. Like, John really used to tell me, hey, bro, you got to do it. You got to step outside your comfort zone, man. And he could tell you that first year covering the Texans, covering Locked On, man. There was moments where John used to just write my notes and say, just say this. And I used to read along because it was just so much, man. But, the journey me and you had for 10 years, man, is only the beginning. I love both of you guys, man. Like I say, man, there's so many people who's responsible and played a role in me, getting this opportunity to be here in Detroit. But when I think when I think back on like the main people, man, you two got like the Mount Rushmores, as they say, you two guys are definitely on that Mount Rushmore, man. And I'm gonna miss doing this show every day, man. Thank you to all the listeners and viewers who've been rocking with us ever since day one. I know at one time y'all hated me, but it's cool, man. I use that as motivation to get better and better and better. And it's not going to be my last time on the show. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing some guest appearances from time to time, man. But, I just want to say, man, I love you boys, man. I love every listener and viewer that we had. I'm going to miss y'all. And just so you know, even though I'm in Detroit, man, after 21, 22 years of living in Houston, I'm H-Town made, baby.
For the South, man.
I'm H-Town made, baby.
You know what we didn't tell them?
What?
So we said from ESPN, rundown. You Can Argue That Sports podcast to the publication, to the rundown report, to Houston Sports Press, all while still covering HBU.
Oh yeah,
PSU, Sabre Cats, Rockets, Texans, and anywhere we could have fit in, man. Even some high school football as well, man. Yeah. You want to talk about a brother that two brothers, man, that just said we're gonna get it how we're gonna get it, and that's how we got it.
I thought Cody was about to go. Each time the wind blows, I hear your heart go.
No, man. Hey, by the way, look, and this is the reason why I'm happy that Sarge is the guy that replacing me, and it goes beyond the relationship that we have. I think this is the perfect analogy I could use. In this situation, I'm Magic Johnson, man. I helped lay the foundation. Me and John, built this podcast. We laid a foundation. just like Magic, laid the foundation of the NBA. But there's a guy that used to be in Chicago that used to wear number 23 who took what Magic did and helped that league get into another level. And I truly do believe that's what my brother Big Sarge is going to do. Because I came on this show a lot of times talking about conversations that I had with John Mechie and Khalil Davis. And Sarge going to shock y'all with the relationship that he has. And look, he's going to bring some real guests on this show for real.
Hey, can I be LeBron or that don't count because he's still
that don't count. That don't count.
And you got a lot of gray hairs too.
Yeah. LeBron do too.
Yeah, but he got the sense to Beijing it.
I'm not, man. This is wisdom right here, man.
Yeah, but that's the
Ross and David Locke.
That's the thing. So we not about to turn into a LeBron Jordan debate because Jordan took that lead to a whole nother level. Not saying LeBron didn't, but the way Jordan did it, it was, and that's what I think Locked On gonna be. People gonna look back and be like, "Who's the GOAT?" Sarge and get in 2 years. We gotta have that debate. Just like in 2 years, we should have another debate that I would definitely come back on this show for. Who's better, 4 or 7?
We ain't gotta wait 2 years. Thank y'all for watching.
We gotta wait 2 minutes. We gotta wait 2 minutes. We
got wait 2 seconds.
Wait, hold up. Wait, which 4? The previous 4 that was with the Texans or the 4 that's in Dallas? Because 7 is better than both of them.
Well, now he is, but I don't know, man. Hey, man.
To celebrate my brother Cody
thing.
Davis, y'all know how Lil Wayne got the light flicker at the beginning of the songs. Mm-hmm. You know it's finna go hard.
Oh my goodness!
Because of brand purposes, I can't put that out there. But to celebrate my brother Detroit, y'all got one coming, man.
Yes,
Thank y'all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Tomorrow we will get back to football talk. We just had to have a little fun. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Continue to follow Cody Davis. Where?
Oh, as always, at Cody Davis _24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS _24. And to the new host, Sarge.
Follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Sarge Sports with a Z at the end.
This is not goodbye. This is more so see you later. No, it's not. It's more so see you later. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.